You know, whenever we hear the phrase urban surveillance, our minds almost instantly jump to some dystopian sci-fi movie, right? Like a shadowy government watching its citizens' every move. But for this explainer, we're actually going to flip that script. We're looking away from those tired Big Brother tropes to uncover the hidden business model that's actually running our smart cities.
Okay, before we follow the money, let's just quickly ground ourselves. A living urban digital twin is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a continuously updated, completely virtual replica of a city. And honestly, it is fed by absolutely everything. We're talking sensors, mobility data, satellite imagery. It literally tracks everything from a random puddle forming on your street right down to the exhaust of a delivery truck idling on the corner.
So, to really understand how all this works, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. Meet the digital twin, the vendor lock-in trap, ingested without your consent, the function creep ladder, and finally, governing the virtual city.
All right, let's jump right into section 1. Meet the digital twin.
Now, we usually think of surveillance as state versus citizen, like we just talked about. But to understand the actual governance problem of a smart city, we have to look somewhere else entirely. We have to follow the money, the liability, and the social costs. Because when we follow those 3 threads, the digital twin becomes way less of a sci-fi surveillance tool and much more of what it actually is, a highly lucrative business model.
Which brings us to section 2, the vendor lock-in trap.
And man, this builds into an enormous municipal vulnerability. Usually, we think of digital purchases like standard software. You buy it, you use it, low stakes. But city twins? They are entirely different. They are essentially married to the city, like physical infrastructure. Think about it. Once a city's flood response, its zoning, and its traffic control all run exclusively through one vendor's digital replica, the cost to switch vendors is absolutely massive. We are literally talking about civilizational-grade exit costs here.
And this isn't just some futuristic fear either. Academic governance literature has been warning us about this for a decade, explicitly noting that these pervasive digital platforms cement corporate dependency on a monopoly that cannot easily be undone. The clear commercial winners here? The platform vendors. Their leverage just compounds annually, especially as everyone from local architects to massive property developers rely on their specific twin to get things like building approvals.
Fortunately, though, there's a really fascinating countermodel to watch over in Rotterdam. Instead of just bowing to tech giants, they are actively developing a shared ownership structure for their core city platform. So they treat the twin as jointly governed public infrastructure rather than a licensed product. If they can actually pull this off, it could easily become the global blueprint for avoiding that vendor lock-in.
Let's move on to section 3, ingested without your consent.
So let's zoom in on the enterprise layer for a second, because if you own a business, you are in the twin, whether you signed a contract or not. The city twin just ingests your entire daily operation, your logistics flows, your facility's energy signature, customer foot traffic, fleet movements. It is all absorbed. Your private business operations simply becomes someone else's profitable data layer. Pretty wild, right?
Legally speaking, this is incredibly murky territory. Under European law, this raises some genuinely unsettled GDPR questions about joint responsibility. I mean, when a city's mobility data perfectly maps your specific delivery trucks, who's actually controlling that data? Researchers are already calling out initiatives, like Barcelona's for example, for totally opaque data processing and a real concerning lack of national standards for basic consent.
But hey, there is a massive silver lining here, and it's a specific number, 94.7%. One recent study shows we can retain roughly 94.7% of this data's analytical usefulness even when using heavy-duty privacy shields, so things like adding statistical noise to the data so individuals can't be identified. The crucial takeaway, we don't have to sacrifice a smart city's utility just to protect our privacy. The math is finally catching up.
Okay, section 4, the function creep ladder.
So how does this tech actually expand without any public input? Well, Gartner's hype cycle visually proves this is a ladder nobody ever actually voted to climb. Look at this. In 2018, we had digital twins of business. 2019, government. 2021, a human. And by 2022, a digital twin of a citizen. Each rung was climbed for locally sensible reasons, like optimizing traffic flow. But suddenly, we are staring down a persistent behavioral replica of the entire population.
This is the absolute textbook definition of function creep. A drainage model gets a slight upgrade and becomes a crowd model, which then very easily becomes a protest model. Each bureaucratic step acts as a quiet software upgrade rather than a loud political debate. And the ethics literature is super clear on this. Once this tracking integrates seamlessly, it creates a massive chilling effect on public assembly and free expression.
Furthermore, a computer simulation always arrives with this aura of false objectivity. Think about it. You can argue with a human city planner, but it's incredibly hard for a regular citizen to argue with an algorithm. It risks hard-coding existing inequalities right into our infrastructure. And frankly, anyone building this tech owes the public the honesty to admit that urban management tools and military surveillance feeds are technological cousins. It's just a dual-use reality.
However, to remain completely impartial with our source material in this explainer, we absolutely have to look at the strongest argument in favor of these twins, which is their undeniable social value. We're talking about neighborhood-scale flood cuts that actually save lives, radically reduced city emissions, faster optimized ambulance access. A city that outright refuses these tools literally pays the price in floods and fumes.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, Governing the Virtual City.
So, how do we actually resolve these tensions before the lock-in compounds permanently? Well, the good news is that good governance doesn't require inventing new technology. It just requires 3 boring but incredibly decisive steps. Step 1, purpose limitation with teeth, meaning the flood twin cannot legally become the crowd twin without a fresh public vote. Step 2, ownership structures with an exit clause, exactly like Rotterdam. And step 3, a public register of ingested data, because, let's face it, you cannot contest a system you can't actually see.
So, what should you take away from all this? Well, don't just get distracted by the flashy privacy headlines. Instead, watch these 3 specific indicators. Whether the Rotterdam model of shared ownership actually spreads, whether any jurisdiction actually enforces strict purpose limitation, and whether local enterprises start legally demanding contractual rights over their ingested data. Keeping an eye on these 3 things will show us where the true future of urban infrastructure is heading. Ultimately, these virtual replicas hold incredible power. They're either going to serve the public good, or they'll cement unbreakable corporate monopolies. Which leaves us with one final, really critical question to think about. As our infrastructure gets smarter and smarter, will the city that watches itself actually answer to anyone?